Good to see everybody this morning. 2 Kings is where we're going to be looking in our Bibles today. 2 Kings chapter 5. 2 Kings chapter 5. We've been running down the life story of the Old Testament prophets. We've been with Elijah and Elisha, and today we're going to continue that little journey in the 5th chapter of the 2 Kings. My heart breaks for soldiers when they come home from the war, especially when they come home wounded or mentally scarred. It breaks my heart because I know the price they paid for my freedom and for keeping us safe. Their sacrifice was a great cost to them, and we honor you. Let's take a moment this morning and just say thank you to our soldiers and those men and women who have defended our country. Would you say thank you to them this morning? Show them some love. When I hear of the failures in our Veterans Administration, it breaks my heart also to know that people have been waiting to get in and they've died, and I'm so glad that we're trying to fix this, because we can't have our government with its keeping its act. It's got to get its act together a little bit better to take care of our people that have suffered and died for us. We do thank them so much. This morning we're going to look at a war hero. We're going to follow the life of a war hero and watch him deal with issues of faith. And when we study the Old Testament, especially these prophet guys of Elijah and Elisha, we are looking at how to increase our faith, how to do a better job with faith, because they teach us to live by faith. And by the way, I just need to say that when you walk with the Lord, it's all about faith. That's what God's doing. He's trying to build faith in you, and to do this Christian thing the best way possible is to do it by faith, and to make that faith grow all the time. We've got to learn how to do faith well this morning. So these two prophets are going to lead us into higher levels of faith, how to learn how to have more faith, and into discipleship, how to be better believers in the Lord. And so we're going to follow them today, and we're going to meet a fellow by the name of Naaman. Now, Naaman was an Aramean. Now, if you take your front of your Bible, if you look in the book of maps, maps, then Genesis, Exodus. I'm just teasing. But if you look in the book of maps, you'll see that there's the Red Sea, and it runs north and south. And when you get up, the Jordan River runs up north and south, empties into the Red Sea. But up in the north, you have the area called Syria. And today, Damascus, that's what's in civil war. Well, Syria, in those days, the people lived there we call the Arameans. And they were sometimes were at war with the northern kingdoms, and sometimes they were joining with others to fight against others with the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. So the Jewish nation is divided into two at this point. We got the north and the south. And sometimes they're fighting each other, and sometimes they're fighting everybody. It's kind of a complicated time. But now, Naaman was a war hero, and he was a Syrian, an Aramean, and he was fighting up there for them, and he was a great soldier. He was a general. He was on the chiefs of staff. He was one of the what you call the generals that meet with the president. He was one of them, and he gained fame when in a recent war with Moab as a valiant soldier, and it served his country well. But now, in this point in his life, he has developed leprosy. Leprosy is a very discouraging disease, especially for those people. Today, if you have leprosy, no big deal. You go get a shot and some antibiotics, and after a series of time, you're going to be fine. But in the ancient world, before they understood about cleanliness and bacteria and biology, to have leprosy was a fatal disease. It was a horrible disease. What it did was it decreased the sensitivity in your extremities. You would lose feeling in your face, ears, eyes, nose, fingers, toes. You would lose sensitivity to those, and horrible things could happen, and you wouldn't even know about it. But he had this thing called leprosy. Now, it was this General Naaman, who joined with the Arameans, who joined the battle with Jehoshaphat and Joram, the Jewish kings, when they went to fight against Moab. It's not a big deal, but it's a part of the biblical history. So they were one-time enemies, one-time Confederates. You've heard the Muslims saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Well, that's what drives this. Whoever was the worst enemies at the time, they were friends against somebody else. Now let me tell you a bit more about Naaman. He was not a Jew. He was an Arab. Today we would call him an Arab. He was not a Muslim. The reason he wasn't a Muslim is because the Muslim religion hadn't even formed yet, hadn't even started. So he wasn't a Muslim. He wasn't a Jew. He wasn't a Christian. He was a God-fearer. He believed in God, but he was before those religions began. He was, as I said, came before the religions got formed, and he was one. The reason I'm saying that, he wasn't one of God's chosen people. That's the main thing. Now, why did God pick out a group of people called the Jewish nation and call them His chosen people? We don't know. Nobody knows. It's a divine idea. It was something God did. He didn't let us in on why He chose them. But He started back with a man named Abraham. Remember, He worked through that family and developed this whole nation of people. And He called them His chosen people. He was going to move them from where they were into a promised land. And He prepared a land for them there in Palestine and Canaan and brought them there. And then they moved away and got captured. But they always came back there to their promised land. So this is a story about a man who wasn't one of the chosen people. Now the chosen people, of course, God chose for several reasons. One, to bring the Messiah through. And Jesus, of course, was born through the line of the Jewish people, through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And then so we know that they brought Jesus here, and there was also people to tell us about salvation, to tell us about God. They were chosen for a specific purpose. But Naaman wasn't part of that. And there's probably not many Jewish people in here today. There may be some, and that's great. I hope you are. But most of us are what we call Gentiles. We are like Naaman. We're from another race. But here's the thing. God loves all people. He didn't just die for the Jews. He loves all nations, every ethnicity, every group of people in the whole world He loves. And He died for you. And Naaman just happened to be one of those. This is a time in the Old Testament that slavery was very common in the ancient world. A lot of slavery. People were captured and brought into slavery. It somewhat reminds us of the modern day. They tell us today that there are as many slaves on planet Earth as there ever has been. We've just gone in different directions with it. It's not as public any longer. There's much, much slavery in our world today. Not in America so much, but even I've been hearing recently that it's even creeping back into our country. So this young girl that we're going to highlight in our story today was a Jewish girl that was captured by a bunch of people, Syrians, and raided, and they captured her. And Naaman brought her home to his wife to take care of her. So this was Naaman's, the general, his wife's slave, was living in the house with them. And so when Naaman came home and they discovered he had leprosy, this slave girl said, I sure wish I could get you back home to Samaria. I wish I could take you back to my people and my God and let you meet Elisha. Because Elisha would pray for you and he would bring God's healing power on your life. And if I could just get you back home to where Elisha lives, you would be healed. So that was how we meet this young slave girl, how we met Naaman and his wife and his disease. So, much like the 200 African girls that were captured this past few months and taken away, Naaman's little slave girl, this little Jewish girl, had been captured and brought. So I'm not painting a pretty picture of Naaman. He was a slave owner. He was a general of an army that was opposing Israel. So in other words, he wasn't in the highlight. He didn't get in the highlight reel of the Bible. He was sort of a guy we wouldn't be so much proud of, but God used him. God wanted to speak to him and show something to him about his life. And so He then used his life to tell us a great story. Now, the sermon's got to start with something like this today, is that faith can grow, but usually it grows in imperfect situations. Anybody in here living an imperfect life, would you raise your hand? That's most of us. Yeah, we live imperfect lives. I don't know about you, but something must be wrong with me. I seem like I learn more about faith when I'm having a hard time. than when I'm in a good time. Seems like my faith grows in difficult times. And I don't know why that is. I wish I weren't so hard-headed, I guess. I know a lot of you would like that. I mean, I appreciate it. But I wish I wasn't. So God could speak to me. Anyway, faith grows in imperfect situations. It'll grow in good situations, but it seems to grow better even in imperfect ones. This guy came home. He was not healthy. Let's start reading chapter 5 and just kind of let this sink into our consciousness. Chapter 5, verse 1. Now Naaman was a commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. He was unhealthy. He had all kinds of experience and recognition and accolades, but he was not healthy. You know what? When you don't have your health, nothing else really matters, does it? Health is so important. And so, let's see what else. We know that people are not fairly treated. Some of you not been fairly treated. This young girl, verse 2. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel. She served Naaman's wife. And some people have lost their freedom. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So this slave girl, in a bad situation, in a slavery situation, away from home, moved from her home, didn't want to move, but now having to serve Naaman's wife, she shared her faith in Jehovah God with a foreigner. And I want to say to you today, some of you who are in difficult situations, and that's a pretty good bunch of us. When you're in a bad situation, you can share your faith with others. That's a great opportunity for you to say, I'm trusting God to get me through this. God is He's promised me He'll never leave me, He'll never fail me. And we have these promises from the Lord that He's going to do that. So that's where we find this young girl. She shared her faith. She said, if we could just get General Naaman, if we could get him home to Israel, he'd be fine. So Naaman, after he heard the little girl speak, he went to his boss. And by the way, everybody's got a boss, amen?
Amen.
Everybody's got one. He went to his boss, and he said, let's read it. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. "By all means go," the king of Aram replied. "I'll send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter, I'm sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy." How would you like to get a letter? Somebody says, "I'm going to send you this person and I want you to fix him. You got to cure him." Well, let's see what the king said. He kind of reacted funny to this. Verse 7. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See, now he's trying to pick a quarrel with me." When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message. Now, Jewish people, when they show signs of grief or great stress, they tear the lapel of their coat or their jacket or their robe. They tear it as a sign of grief. So when the prophet Elisha saw or heard that the king had torn his robes, he wondered, what's going on? Why are you doing like this? So when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king had torn his robes, he sent him this message. "Why have you torn your robes? Have this man come to me, and he will know then there's a prophet in Israel." So you get to the point. Now, so Naaman is going to be sent. Naaman the general, the Damascus general, is going to be sent to the prophet Elisha. You get the point now. So he shows up at his house. The sick general shows up at the prophet's house. And that's where we are. We're going to meet. We're going to have that little interchange right now. Verse 9. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him to say to him, get this, he sent a messenger to him. He didn't even get up out of his chair. He sent a messenger to him. He said, "Have him go wash in the Jordan 7 times. Wow. That was kind of like an insult, wasn't it? I mean, this is a big guy, big dog, from general in the army of Aramea. And he's down here, And the prophet doesn't even come out of his house. Sends a servant, says, go have him wash the Jordan 7 times. And then you'll be clean. Well, you can see it's kind of a slam in the face. Now, here's what I want to tell you today. We've all got a lot to learn about faith. How many of you learned everything you need to know about it? Not me. We've got a lot to learn. And so today we're going to try to learn how to do better with faith. Maybe we'll find some things in this story that we can look at and realize that that's been blocking me from my faith, from growing my faith. That's been in my way. And so let's see today, if we walk down through this, if we can learn something about how to grow a better faith. The first thing I want to tell you in my little outline here is that expectations can get in your way of faith. Are you with me? You can have mental, you can foresee something, and you run in your head, this is how it's going to go. This is how I'm going to grow up, I'm going to marry a perfect person, and I'm going to have perfect children, I'm going to have a perfect job, and I'm going to live in a perfect house, and everything's just going to be wonderful, wonderful. Expectations are going to be set. And when we get those expectations set like that, sometimes God has another idea. Shake your head like this if you're still following me this morning. And we live with expectations that are not met. And we get mad at God for that. Let's see, as Naaman explains himself about why he had what expectations he had about the prophet and how he dealt with it. Verse 11. But Naaman went away angry and said, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. See, he thought, well, surely he'll come out, in the name of the Lord, I'm going to rub my hand over this spot. In other words, he thought he'd do something to cure his leprosy. And then he said to the people with him, his entourage, are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all these waters of Israel? Well, they were better. Up in the mountains around Damascus, clear mountain streams. You've seen those clear mountain streams, beautiful. I'm sure there's trout fishing up there, and beautiful, cool. It's gorgeous water, clear. Up there in the mountains around Damascus, it's a lot prettier. Now they're down in the Jordan. Jordan's not a pretty river. It's dirty and ugly, yucky. That's what my grandkids say is yucky down there, And that's where, now he wants me to go wash in the Jordan when I could have taken a bath easy up in the beautiful rivers of the mountains. Okay. So he turned off, it says, he turned and went off in a rage. None of you have ever done that, I know. When your expectations you haven't pouted and stomped the ground and walked off in a rage. No, you're much too mature for that. Expectations. It's okay to have them, but when they get in the way of your faith growth, in other words, when your expectations slam right into reality, and you think God is failing you, or God's not done like He should have done something, you've got to get rid of those expectations. Again, I say, God's got a better idea than you, and so trust Him. Now, the next area we want to look at in developing faith is learning to have persistence. Persistence. In other words, you cannot grow faith if you're start and stop. Yes or no, in and out. We've got to have consistent faith. Now, before you get all nervous and get mad and walk out, let me say it like this. Everybody's faith has back steps. Most of the time we take 3 forward and then we take 2 back, right? 3 forward, 2 back. But we're gaining. Little by little, inch at a time, but we're gaining. You with me? Okay, shake your head. I want to make sure you're wide awake now. That we're gaining. And so we have to remember that we have to be persistent. It's important that we start by faith, but it's also important that we live by faith and even finish by faith. All right, so let's come back now and talk about some persistence. Pick up with me the reading in verse 13. Naaman's servants went to him and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? In other words, it's no big deal. Just go wash in the creek. Get it over with. You don't do it. If he had told you to go jump off a mountain, you'd have done it. Or do something big, you'd have done it. He said, just go wash in the creek. You'll be fine. Now, verse 14. So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him. And his flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of a young boy. Let's let our imaginations run a minute. Put your imagination cap on, and let's go down to the Jordan, the muddy Jordan, with this general from the Damascus army. Let's go down there. He said, I know that old prophet told me to go 7 times. So he waded out into the water. I don't know how far he went, and did his self-baptism. He baptized himself right there 7 times. But he started once. He went under. He came back up, and he looked at his hands. No, I still got leprosy. Well, I thought, he said 7 times. That's what his people around him said. 7 times. Not 1 time, 7 times. He said, oh, okay. So he went and done it again. Nothing. No change. 2 times. 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. How many of you quit and gone home now? You know what I'm saying? How many of you just said, nah, forget it. That fool, he doesn't know what he's talking about. 5 times. 6 times. The 6th time when he came up out of the water, he was not 1 bit better off than he was the first time. But guess what happened on the 7th time? He was cured of his leprosy. And let's read it there. And he became clean like that of a young boy. He was like a baby, like a child. He had no skin diseases whatsoever. And he was healed. Don't despair on your journey of faith. You're going to be baptized in the fire 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And you're going to wonder, is my faith ever growing? Is this doing any good? Am I wasting my time? The answer is no, you're not. You be faithful. You be persistent. You hold on for the journey, not the start. I know back when I was a younger person, it seemed like everything in our churches was about evangelism. Get saved and get started in the kingdom growth. Get saved and get started. And then I don't think it ever dawned on us that we don't need to just get saved, but we need to live for Christ all of our life and grow in our faith. And that's what I want to say today. Don't despair. Be persistent. You've got to stay in there and hang on. Now, there's another lesson we learned here. A couple more here. The next thing is you can't buy faith. You cannot buy it. It will never be purchased. I don't care how long you try, how much you give, how much money you give to the cowboy church, or how many sick people you help fund their medical care. I don't care how many you do, it won't help your faith. Money cannot buy your faith. Now let's see what happened here in verse 15. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. Okay, now you get it now? 7 times they baptized. He's clean as a newborn baby. They get on their mules and their donkeys and head back to the prophet's house. He never has to come out of his house yet. You're with me? He's still staying in the house. And so we come back now. And he said, he stood before him and said, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant. I want to pay you now. I want to help you out. I want to pay you for what you've done for me. The prophet answered, as surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing. And even though Naaman urged him, oh, come on, please take it, he refused. You with me now? Wouldn't take any payment. He's not like a modern preacher, is he? Something bad wrong with this preacher. I mean, we'd have said, yeah, maybe $10,000. That'd be about, I don't care, just payments, however you want to do it. Support my ministry. Send in money over the radio or whatever. Send me some money. But he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to accept a thing. Wonder why he did that. I think he wanted to teach him the biggest lesson of all. And the biggest lesson was God saves. God saves. And it's a free gift. Faith is an act of grace. And God gave you His grace. And it's free to you. And you can't buy it. You have to just accept it and believe it in your heart. You've got to just accept it. But he refused. But not everybody around him felt the same way. Not all of Elisha's support team felt the same way he did. And so one of Elisha's servants, Gehazi, we've met him before, but now Gehazi said, wait a minute, I know who pays the bills around here. Elisha, he doesn't know anything about money. I'll take care of his money. I know. So Gehazi had another idea. Let's read it.
17.
Hang with me here. Verse 17. If you will not, said Naaman, please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as mules can carry. For your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and is leaning on my arm, I have to bow there also. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this. And Elisha said, go in peace. Now, I got ahead of myself just a little bit, but let me talk about this. Whenever he took the king to church, to worship the false god Rimmon, whenever he said, when the king bows, he leans on me, and I have to bow down with him to help him lean. And he said, I don't mean it in my heart. It just means nothing to me, because I know there's only one God. His name is Jehovah. He just said that. He said, but what do I do? What do I do? What the prophet said, go in peace. Shalom. Go in peace. You do what you got to do, as long as your hearts are, you know what's important, you know what's right, but go in peace. Now back to where I thought I was in my story. Now the Naaman and his entourage of mules had left with some dirt from the land, because he wanted to take some dirt for Israel back with him. So I don't know, because he thought God was a God of only this kind of dirt, I guess, I don't know. But he wanted to take him back. And so Gehazi, here's the main point. Gehazi said to his servants, he said, guys, come go with me, because I think my master was too easy on Naaman. Let me just read it. After Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, my master was too easy on Naaman, this Aramean, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. Verse 21. So Gehazi hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw him running toward him, he got down from his chariot to meet him. Is everything all right? He asked. Everything's all right, Gehazi answered. My master sent me to say, 2 young men from the company of the prophets have just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing. By all means, take 2 talents, said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them. And he tied up the 2 talents of silver and gave them to his servants. He carried, and the clothing and all that. And he carried them ahead of Gehazi. When Gehazi came to the hill, he took the things from the servant and put them away in the house. He sent the men away, and they left. Now, so Gehazi went against what the old prophet had said. He said, no, I don't want to think. I want to teach you a lesson. But Gehazi said, no, I'm going to go sneak around and do this. Now let's see what happens, because God knows what's in our hearts. God knows what's down inside. If you were forced, Naaman was forced to worship in a false god palace. Well, he said, I understand it. Just go in peace. And now this has happened to him, and money was taken that he didn't want. But God knows our heart. Now, please let me say that today, because some of you feel like you're failing. I know you feel like you're failing. And the truth is, you've got to keep consistently lowering your expectations, keeping your expectations under control, and being persistent with this, because God knows how this works. So let me finish by reading. When he went in and stood before his master, Elisha asked him, where have you been, Gehazi? Your servant didn't go anywhere. I didn't go anywhere. What are you talking about? Where have I been? Gehazi answered. But Elisha said to him, well, was my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to take money, or to accept clothes, or to olive groves and vineyards, or flocks and herds, or male and female slaves? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and to your descendants forever. Then Gehazi went from Elisha's presence, and his skin was leprous. The leprosy had transferred to the servant of Elisha. It's white as snow. Well, it's a long, complicated story, but I hope you've learned some lessons today about faith. I've learned some things about faith, and I want us to grow in our faith. So here's what we do. Let's live always to make sure we're taking steps toward the Lord. 3 forward, maybe 2 back, but still yet, we're moving toward the Lord in our faith, and it's important. And then I guess I want to say, and as you go through this struggle of life, go in peace. Go in peace, knowing God is in control. Watch your expectations and be persistent. Let's pray.